My name is Emily, and for most of my life, I was the kind of person who bent over backward to keep everyone happy, especially my family. If they wanted me to be quiet, I stayed quiet. If they wanted me to change, I tried my best. I thought that's what love was, sacrifice. So when I got engaged to Daniel, I believed, foolishly, that love would finally win, that my family would see the joy in my eyes and accept him, even if he wasn't the man they had dreamed up for me. Daniel wasn't wealthy. He didn't come from a polished, picture-perfect family. He worked long hours as a mechanic, his hands always rough, his clothes smelling faintly of oil, but he had the purest heart I had ever known. He treated me like I was the most important person in the world, and for once, I felt safe. Truly safe. The day he proposed, it was nothing grand. No fancy restaurant, no sparkling backdrop, just the two of us at the park where we first met. Him fumbling nervously with the little velvet box while I laughed and cried at the same time. It was clumsy, imperfect, and absolutely beautiful. I said yes without hesitation. In the months that followed, I planned my dream wedding. I imagined walking down the aisle, my family smiling at me, proud of the woman I had become. I wanted that picture in my head more than anything. My parents watching, my sister standing beside me, my brother cheering me on. But when the day finally came, those seats were empty. I stood at the back of the church, veil trembling in my hands, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. I kept telling myself, they'll come. Maybe they're just late. I searched the crowd as the music started, my eyes darting from row to row, desperately looking for their faces. Nothing. Only Daniel's family sat there, smiling and clapping, filling the space with warmth that wasn't supposed to be theirs alone. The people who were supposed to love me weren't there at all. I held my head high as I walked down the aisle, but inside, I was breaking. Each step felt heavier than the last, and by the time I reached Daniel, I could barely breathe. That was the day I promised myself something. I would never forgive them. Never. But what I didn't know then was that this wound, this betrayal, was only the beginning. To understand why my family didn't show up, you have to know what came before. Their absence wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. From the moment I introduced Daniel to them, it was war. My mother, Linda, wrinkled her nose the first time she shook his hand. I remember her looking at his work shirt, the faint grease stain on his sleeve, and saying, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "So, you fix cars for a living," as if being a mechanic made him less of a man. My sister Rebecca was even worse. She's a lawyer, the golden child who never let me forget it. Over dinner one night, she leaned back in her chair, smirking, and said, "Emily, are you sure this is the best you can do? You've always had a soft heart, but don't let that cloud your judgment." And my dad, he just sat there. George, the quiet one, always following Mom's lead. He didn't say much, but the way he avoided Daniel's eyes told me everything. Even my brother Michael, who was usually laid back, joined in. He didn't insult Daniel directly, but he started joking around in a way that stung. Little digs about money, about marrying up. He thought he was being funny. I didn't. The worst came a few weeks before the wedding. I went to their house to try and talk it out. I thought maybe, if I just explained how much Daniel meant to me, they'd soften. Instead, Mom gave me an ultimatum. I can still hear her voice, sharp and cold. "Emily, if you go through with this, don't expect us to stand by you. We won't be part of a mistake." I remember Rebecca nodding in agreement, arms crossed like she was the judge and I was on trial. And Dad? He just lowered his gaze, pretending to study the floor. I begged them. I cried. I told them Daniel was my happiness, that he loved me the way no one else had ever had. But it was like talking to stone. In the end, I had to choose. And I chose Daniel. When I walked out of that house that night, I thought maybe they'd come around. Maybe on the wedding day they'd change their minds and walk through those doors. But I was wrong. When I chose Daniel, I didn't just lose my family, I became their enemy. After the wedding, when the last guest left and the music faded, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed in my dress, staring at my phone. Not one message, not one missed call, not even a text from my mother saying she was sorry. I remember Daniel kneeling in front of me, gently taking my hands. His eyes were so full of worry. "Emmy," he whispered, "you don't need them. You have me now." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside I was shattered. I imagined that night 1,000 different ways, but never like this. A bride without a family, a daughter disowned for choosing love. The first year of our marriage was hard. Daniel and I didn't have much. He worked long shifts at the garage, sometimes 12 hours a day, coming home with grease still under his fingernails. I worked as a receptionist at a small clinic, earning just enough to help with rent and groceries. Our apartment was tiny, with peeling wallpaper and a faucet that leaked no matter how many times Daniel fixed it. But it was ours, and strangely, it was happier than the big, cold house I grew up in. We laughed together. We dreamed together. We made plans for a future that no one could take from us. Still, there were nights that the silence crept in. Nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Not about Daniel, never about him, but about cutting myself off from the people I had spent my entire life trying to please. One night, I broke down. Daniel found me sitting in the kitchen, clutching an old photo album. It was one my grandmother had given me, filled with childhood pictures, birthdays, family trips, Christmas mornings. "I don't understand," I whispered through tears. "How can they just erase me? Like I never mattered." Daniel pulled me into his arms, resting his chin on my head. His eyes were so full of worry. "Emmy," he said, "you didn't erase yourself. You erased themselves. They're the ones missing out." He always knew what to say, but the ache didn't go away overnight. The only person who didn't abandon me was my grandmother, Margaret. Sweet, stubborn Margaret. She was my mother's mother, but unlike my mom, she had never cared about appearances or social status. A month after the wedding, she showed up at our apartment with a casserole dish in one hand and a small envelope in the other. "Don't you dare tell your mother I came," she said with a mischievous grin. "I'd never hear the end of it." She hugged me so tight I thought I might break, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like a daughter again. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter telling me how proud she was of me for following my heart. She even slipped in a little cash, not much, but enough to help with bills that month. Her visits became a quiet lifeline. She'd sit at our kitchen table, sipping tea while Daniel told her stories from the garage. She never once asked about the family, never once pressured me to reconcile. She just loved me, and that love kept me going. Years passed. Slowly, life began to change. Daniel was promoted to manager at the garage, and I went back to school part-time to study medical administration. We worked hard, side by side, building something my parents would have sneered at, but something real. We bought our first little house after 5 years. It wasn't fancy, but it had a garden out back where I planted roses, and every time they bloomed, I thought of how far we'd come. But even as we built this life together, the shadow of my family lingered. Holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, those were the days the silence was deafening.
I'd scroll through social media and see my siblings together, smiling as if I had never existed. My mother posting pictures of family dinners without me, her captions always dripping with pride. It was like they had cut me out of the picture completely. I told myself I didn't care, that their approval meant nothing, but deep down, a part of me still hoped that one day, maybe, they would realize what they had lost. I thought time would heal things. I thought if I just lived my life quietly, they would eventually come around. But I was wrong, because years later, out of nowhere, their sudden return shattered everything I thought I knew. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the past came crashing back into my life. I was in my office, buried in paperwork, when my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting to see Daniel or maybe a reminder notification. Instead, I froze. The name on the screen read Rebecca, my sister. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. Rebecca hadn't called me in nearly 8 years. 8 years of silence, of birthdays ignored, of holidays without so much as a text. My hands shook as I picked up the phone, torn between hanging up and answering. Finally, I swiped. Hello? My voice cracked like I was the younger sister again, bracing for one of her lectures. Emily, she said flatly, what do you want? There was a pause on the other end, the kind that makes your stomach twist. Then she sighed. It's Mom. She's not well. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mother, the woman who had missed my wedding, who had erased me from her life, who once told me I was throwing my future away. Sick? I sat there in stunned silence until Rebecca continued. She's been having health issues. Dad's not doing great either. We thought, well, maybe it's time we put things behind us. Maybe you could come see her. I laughed bitterly. The sound surprised even me. 8 years, Rebecca, 8 years of nothing. And now suddenly you want me to come running back because she's sick? It's not like that, she insisted quickly. We've all made mistakes. Maybe this is our chance to reconnect. Mom really wants to see you. Her words twisted the knife in my chest. Mom really wants to see you. Where was that want on my wedding day? Where was that want when she posted pictures with Rebecca and Michael, calling them her whole world? I swallowed hard. Why now? Another pause. Because family is family, Emily, and we shouldn't waste more time. I didn't answer right away. My heart was torn in two. Part of me burned with anger, the voice that remembered standing at the altar with empty seats where my family should have been. But another part of me, the part that had spent years quietly aching, wanted to believe her, wanted to believe I still mattered to them. That night, I told Daniel about the call. He was sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing some invoices from our business. When I mentioned Rebecca's name, he looked up sharply. What did she say? His jaw tightened. I explained everything. Mom's illness, the invitation to reconnect. Daniel listened quietly, his eyes narrowing as I spoke. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. Em, don't do it, he said firmly. They had years to come back to you. Years. And they didn't. Now suddenly they need something, and here they are. It's not about love. It's about convenience. I hated that he was right, but I also hated the thought of regret, of ignoring the call and then one day finding out my mother was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Rebecca's words over and over in my head. Mom really wants to see you. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for, that after all these years, my family finally wanted me back. But as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, with Daniel sleeping soundly beside me, a cold feeling crept into my gut, a feeling that whispered, "Be careful, this isn't what it seems." I should have listened to that voice. I should have trusted Daniel's warning. because saying yes to that reunion was the single biggest mistake of my life. The restaurant smelled like roasted garlic and red wine. It was one of those trendy Italian places with soft lighting and white tablecloths, the kind of place my mother loved where appearances mattered more than comfort. I arrived a little early, my hands clammy as I sat in the parking lot staring at the entrance. I almost didn't go in. My chest was tight, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to drive away, to run home to Daniel and pretend the call had never happened. But another part of me, the daughter who still craved her mother's approval, pushed me forward.
When I finally stepped inside, I spotted them immediately. My mother, father, Rebecca, and Michael, all seated at a large round table near the window. They looked exactly the same and yet somehow different. Rebecca's hair was sharper, her suit more expensive. Michael had put on weight, his once carefree smile dimmed. My father looked older, his shoulders stooped, and my mother, Linda, sat there in a cream-colored sweater, her hair perfectly styled, but her face pale and drawn. For a moment, none of them saw me. I stood frozen in the entryway, my throat tight. Then Rebecca looked up and her eyes widened. "Emily!" she exclaimed, standing up with a smile that looked a little too rehearsed. "You came." The others turned. My father gave a small nod. Michael muttered, "Hey, Em." And my mother, she stared at me for a long moment before her eyes welled up with tears. "Oh, Emily," she whispered, rising slowly to her feet. "My baby." I didn't know what I expected. Maybe coldness, maybe indifference. But when she reached out her arms, trembling, I felt my resolve falter. Against my better judgment, I let her hug me. Her perfume was the same as always, floral and overwhelming. She held me tightly, her voice breaking. "I've missed you so much." I didn't hug back right away. My arms stayed stiff at my sides until finally, slowly, I patted her shoulder. "It's been a long time," I said carefully. We sat down, the air thick with unspoken words. The waiter came by, but nobody was ready to order. Everyone was just busy staring at me like I was some long-lost artifact. Rebecca cleared her throat. "We're just so glad you're here. We've all been talking, and we regret how things happened." "How things happened?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. My voice came out sharper than I intended. "You mean when you all boycotted my wedding?" The table went silent. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. My father cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Rebecca's smile faltered. "Emily," Mom said softly, "I made a mistake. I made a mistake. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was wrong." Her words sounded rehearsed, like lines from a play. My chest ached anyway. Michael finally spoke up, his voice quieter than I remembered. "We should have been there. I'm sorry." I wanted to believe them. God, I wanted to. But something about the way Rebecca kept glancing at Mom, like checking if she was saying the right thing, made me uneasy. I leaned back in my chair. 8 years, I said slowly. Not one call, not one letter. And now suddenly you want to reconnect? Why? My mother's lip trembled. "Because I'm sick, Emily, and I don't want to waste any more time. I want my family together again." Her voice cracked, and for a moment I almost crumbled. The little girl in me wanted to reach across the table and hold her hand, to forgive, to forget, to start over. But then Rebecca spoke. Her tone was too smooth, too calculating. "Besides, we've all grown older. Things are different now. You and Daniel must be doing well for yourselves. It's time we all put the past behind us." The way she said it made my stomach twist. It wasn't just about Mom being sick. It wasn't just about regret. There was something else beneath the surface. A need. A hunger. I forced a smile and nodded, but my mind was racing. What did they really want from me? The dinner dragged on with polite small talk, but the tension never left. My mother asked about Daniel, her voice syrupy sweet, though she'd once sworn Daniel would ruin my life.
My father asked about our house, about my job, his eyes darting away whenever I answered. Rebecca did most of the talking, filling the silence with stories of her cases, her successes, and thinly veiled questions about my finances. Running your own business must be lucrative, she remarked casually, twirling her wine glass. I didn't answer. I just smiled. Inside, the realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. They didn't miss me. They needed me. And for the first time in years, I felt something other than pain. I felt power. That's when I realized this wasn't about love. This was about desperation. And if they thought they could use me, they had no idea who they were dealing with. For weeks after that dinner, my phone started buzzing more than it had in years. It was strange. After nearly a decade of silence, my family suddenly couldn't stop reaching out. Texts from Rebecca checking in, calls from Mom asking if I could stop by sometime, even Michael sending me little jokes like nothing had happened. At first, I almost let myself believe it was real. I wanted to believe the ice had finally thawed, but then the cracks started showing. It began with Rebecca. She called one afternoon while I was at home folding laundry. "Em," she said brightly, "you'll never believe what a week I've had. The firm's been struggling. We lost a couple of big clients. Total nightmare." I made sympathetic noises, but she didn't stop there. "I was thinking maybe you and Daniel could refer people. You've got your business connections now, right? I know you've built something really solid." The way she said it, so casual, so expectant, made my stomach tighten. Then came Michael. He invited me out for coffee, just the two of us. For a moment, I thought maybe he genuinely wanted to catch up. But halfway through, he leaned in, lowering his voice. "Look, Em, I'll be honest. I've had some bad luck with investments. Lost more than I'd like to admit. I'm kind of in a tight spot." I set my cup down slowly. "Michael, are you asking me for money?" He flushed. "No, not exactly. Just maybe some advice. Or maybe if you and Daniel know of opportunities. You guys seem to be doing well, and I could really use a leg up." I stared at him across the table, my chest heavy with the weight of déjà vu. My family hadn't come back because they missed me. They had come back because they needed me. The final piece of the puzzle came from my mother herself. She called me late one evening, her voice trembling. "Oh, Emily, I hate to burden you with this, but your father and I are having trouble keeping up with the mortgage. Medical bills are piling up. It's all been so overwhelming." I gripped the phone tighter, anger boiling beneath my skin. Years ago, she told me Daniel wasn't good enough, that I was throwing my future away, and now here she was, practically begging for help from the very life she disapproved of. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to remind her of the empty seats at my wedding, of the years of silence. But instead, I bit my tongue and listened, letting her think I was sympathetic. When the call ended, I sat in the dark living room, Daniel's hand resting gently on my knee. His eyes searched mine. "They're using you," he said quietly. "I know," I whispered. "I finally see it." But instead of despair, a strange calm settled over me. They thought I was still the same desperate daughter, longing for scraps of their affection. They thought I would come running, checkbook in hand, ready to save them. But this time, they were wrong. I wasn't the same Emily who once begged for their love. I was stronger now. I had a husband who had stood by me, a life I had built with my own hands, and a sense of self they could never take away again. So when I hung up that phone, I made a decision. I would give them exactly what they wanted: hope. I would let them believe they still had control over me. And then I would take it all away. I smiled in the darkness, my heart pounding with a new kind of resolve. They thought they were pulling the strings, but every move they made was exactly what I wanted. This time, I would write the ending. From the moment I realized what my family really wanted, something inside me shifted. For years, I had been the one begging for their love, for their approval, for a seat at the table. Now, the roles were reversed, and instead of slamming the door in their faces, I decided to keep it open, just enough for them to believe they had a chance. I started small. When Rebecca called again to complain about the firm, I softened my voice and said, "That must be so stressful, Beck. I can't imagine having that much pressure on your shoulders." She practically purred with relief. "Exactly. You understand. Maybe when things settle down, you could come by the office. I'd love to introduce you to some of my partners." "Of course," I said sweetly, though in my mind I was already cataloging her desperation. When Michael texted me another "just checking in" message, I responded right away, throwing in a memory from childhood, something about the time he pushed me on the swing until Mom yelled at him. He replied within seconds, his words dripping with nostalgia. "Yeah, those were the good old days. Feels like forever ago." It was almost too easy. And my mother. Oh, my mother. She laid it on the thickest. I visited her one Sunday afternoon, carrying a bouquet of flowers I had picked up on the way. She greeted me at the door with watery eyes, hugging me as though we hadn't been estranged for nearly a decade. "You look beautiful," she said, holding me at arm's length. "Daniel must be treating you well." I smiled, tilting my head. "He does. He always has." Her expression faltered for a fraction of a second before she plastered the smile back on. "Good. That's good." We sat in the living room, and she launched into a litany of woes. Her health, her medical bills, the strain of managing the house. I nodded at all the right moments, offering tissues when her voice cracked. "You've always had such a big heart," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I knew one day you'd understand the importance of family." Inside, I almost laughed. She was playing me like a violin, not realizing I was playing her right back. When I went home that evening, Daniel was waiting for me in the kitchen. He didn't look up from the bills he was reviewing. "How was it?" I slid into a chair across from him, smirking. "They're desperate. All of them. And they think I'm their salvation." Daniel frowned. "Emily—" "I know what you're going to say," I interrupted gently, "that I shouldn't waste my energy, that I should walk away. But don't you see? This isn't about them anymore. This is about me finally holding the power, about making them feel what I felt, powerless, small, left out." He studied me for a long moment, his expression torn. Finally, he sighed. "Just don't let them hurt you again." I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "They won't. Not this time." Over the next few weeks, I perfected my act. At family dinners, I played the dutiful daughter, listening to Rebecca's endless rants about her unfair clients, offering sympathetic nods when Michael dropped hints about money troubles, and letting Mom believe I was ready to forget and forget. I never promised anything outright. That was the key. I stayed vague, using words like maybe and we'll see. Just enough to keep their hope alive, to make them believe the reconciliation was real. Meanwhile, I watched, I listened, and I waited. Every interaction gave me more information, little cracks in their stories, tiny glimpses of how bad things really were. Rebecca's firm wasn't just struggling, it was hemorrhaging money. Michael wasn't just unlucky, he was drowning in debt. My parents weren't just strained, they were on the brink of losing their house. And the more desperate they became, the more careful I was to remain calm, distant, and just out of reach. I could see the frustration building in their eyes each time we met, the hunger behind their smiles, the impatience beneath their words. They wanted me to swoop in and save them, but I never did. Instead, I gave them crumbs. A sympathetic glance here, a vague comment about maybe talking to Daniel about it there. Just enough to keep them hooked. It was a slow dance, one I choreographed step by step. And all the while, a cold satisfaction grew inside me. Because for the first time in my life, they needed me more than I needed them. And I wasn't about to let them forget it. The idea came to me late one night while I was scrolling through old photos on my phone. There was a picture of me and Daniel on our wedding day. Just the two of us, smiling in front of that little courthouse. No bridesmaids, no family, no proud parents. Just us. I stared at that photo for a long time, and the thought hit me. They took that moment from me. They left me standing alone on the most important day of my life. And now, years later, they wanted to waltz back in as though nothing had happened? No. They needed to feel what I felt. They needed a stage, an audience, to witness their fall the way mine had been witnessed in silence. So I came up with a plan. The perfect opportunity landed in my lap when my cousin Sarah invited us to her engagement party. It was supposed to be a big family affair, everyone from both sides gathered at this fancy restaurant downtown. The kind of event where everyone dressed up, smiled for photos, and pretended we were one big, happy family.
I told Daniel my idea over breakfast. He was buttering toast when I dropped it casually, as though it wasn't something that had been simmering in my mind for weeks. I think I'm going to say something at Sarah's party, I said. He froze, knife in hand. Say something? Like what? I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Like the truth. Like what they did to me. How they abandoned me when I needed them the most. Everyone's going to be there, Daniel. All the cousins, the aunts, the uncles. It's the perfect time. He set the knife down and rubbed his forehead. Emily, you've already got them on the hook. Do you really need to humiliate them? Yes, I said firmly, my voice sharper than I intended. You don't understand. They pretend. Every time we're in public, they act like nothing happened, like we're one big happy family. They smile, they hug me, they make jokes. But behind those smiles, they're still using me, still expecting me to be their savior. I can't keep playing along. Daniel's eyes softened, but there was a sadness in them. If you do this, there's no going back. I met his gaze, my decision already made. Good. I don't want to go back. The night of the party, I dressed with precision. A sleek black dress, heels that clicked with authority, hair pulled back just enough to show I meant business. I wanted to look untouchable. Daniel, as always, looked sharp in his suit, though his expression carried that quiet worry I'd grown used to. When we walked into the restaurant, heads turned, not just because of me, but because it was still a novelty for me to show up to family gatherings after so many years. Aunts rushed to hug me. Cousins exclaimed, "Emily, you look amazing." Rebecca gave me a smile that was just a shade too wide, too forced. "Emily," Mom cooed, sweeping in for a hug. "I'm so glad you made it." "Of course," I said smoothly, returning the hug but keeping my eyes cold. I wouldn't miss it. Dinner passed with the usual chatter. Sarah glowed, showing off her ring, and everyone toasted to her happiness. But the whole time, I felt the words bubbling inside me, waiting for the right moment. And then dessert arrived. The clinking of glasses quieted as Sarah stood up to thank everyone for coming. I watched her with a smile, my heart pounding. When she sat back down, I rose to my feet. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying over the table, "I'd like to say something too." The room stilled. All eyes turned to me. Rebecca's smile faltered. Mom's hand froze halfway to her glass. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I took a slow breath, letting the silence stretch. Then I began. "I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight, celebrating Sarah and her fiancé. It's beautiful to see family come together for such a happy occasion." Nods, murmurs of agreement. I could feel the tension tighten in my chest, but I pressed on. And standing here tonight, surrounded by all of you, I can't help but think back to my own wedding day. The words dropped like stones into a pond. Ripples of confusion spread across the table.
Aunts exchanged glances, cousins tilted their heads. My wedding day was different, I continued, my tone even, almost conversational. It wasn't filled with family. There were no toasts, no photographs with smiling relatives, just me standing in a courthouse with Daniel, the only person who showed up for me. Because none of you did. The room went silent. I could practically hear the sound of forks clattering against plates as people froze mid-bite. I looked directly at my mother. My own parents boycotted my wedding because they didn't approve of my husband. My sister told me I was making a mistake. My brother made jokes about money, and not one of you stood up for me. Gasps from the cousins, and Aunt muttered, "What?" under her breath. Sarah's fiancé blinked, clearly unsure what to do. Rebecca shifted in her seat, her face turning red. "Emily, this isn't the time." "Oh, it's exactly the time. Because for years, I carried that pain alone. For years, I wondered why I wasn't enough for my own family. And now? Now you all want to smile in my face, invite me to your parties, and pretend like nothing happened?" Mom finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Sweetheart, we were only trying to protect you. Protect me? By abandoning me? By humiliating me? You didn't protect me, Mom. You destroyed me. And I built myself up without you." The silence that followed was suffocating. I scanned the table, taking in the shocked faces, the uncomfortable shuffling. For the first time, I felt no shame, no weakness, just power. I leaned back slightly, my lips curling into a smile. "So, thank you. Thank you for reminding me how strong I had to become. And thank you, Daniel, for being the only one who ever believed in me." I raised my glass toward him. He hesitated, then clinked his against mine. The rest of the table sat in stunned silence. And in that silence, I tasted victory. The night of the party left a quiet tension in the air that lingered long after we left the restaurant. I could still feel it in my chest, a mix of adrenaline and satisfaction. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I felt untouchable. But the real work wasn't done yet. In the days following the unveiling, word spread quickly. My cousins whispered about it during family gatherings. Some of the aunts called to express concern, while others, quietly, admitted they thought I'd done the right thing. Rebecca, however, did not take it well. The first call I received from her afterwards was dripping with fake sweetness. "Emily, I think you overreacted. I'm sure everyone understands that we were just trying to reconnect." I chuckled softly, letting the sound carry a hint of mockery. "Reconnect? Rebecca, I let you think I'd forgive you. I let you believe you were back in control. And now I get to show you what it feels like to be powerless?" She didn't respond at first, only a sharp intake of breath. "Emily, what are you talking about?" "You'll see," I said calmly, hanging up the phone. My parents were the next to make their move. They sent me messages, flowers, even a bottle of wine, trying to butter me up with guilt and sweetness. But each gesture only fueled my plan. I answered just enough to let them think they had a chance. A text here, "I'll think about it." A voicemail there, "Maybe we can talk soon." Every interaction was calculated, like a slow burn. I wanted them hungry, desperate for my approval, and I reveled in watching them fall right into it. Then came the perfect moment. Daniel and I had grown our business steadily over the years, not flashy, but solid. Our company was expanding, our savings secure, and we had a small team of loyal employees who respected both of us. It was the life my parents once dismissed.
So I invited them to see it. "Come by the office," I said in one of our exchanges. "I think you'd be impressed." Of course, they were thrilled. My mother practically squealed. Rebecca sounded delighted. And Michael practically skipped through the door. They didn't suspect that this visit would be the beginning of their humiliation.
When they arrived, I led them through the building, showing off the office, the client boards, the employees working efficiently at their desks. Mom kept murmuring, "Oh, Emily, I had no idea." Rebecca was practically gushing, taking mental notes about how well I had done for myself. Michael couldn't stop staring at the computers, the cash flow charts, the awards lining the walls. I let them wander in awe for a few minutes. Then Daniel and I guided them to the conference room for a quick meeting. I had everyone seated, pretending this was just a casual business introduction. And then I dropped the bomb. "I wanted to show you something," I began, my voice calm and deliberate. "For years, I was the one who needed you. I was the one standing at the altar, hoping you'd come. I was the one who waited for phone calls, messages, any sign of care, and you never showed up. Not on my wedding day, not when I needed you the most." They squirmed in their seats, exchanging guilty looks. "I want you to see how far we've come without your help. Daniel and I built this business together. We're financially stable. We've expanded into 3 different branches. And yes, we could help if we wanted, but that's the point." I paused, letting it sink in. "We don't owe you anything. Not a penny, not our time, not our forgiveness. You abandoned me. You humiliated me. And now, after years of silence, you crawl back expecting to reap the benefits of a life you refuse to be part of." My mother's lips trembled. Rebecca's face went pale, and Michael slumped in his chair. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper that carried in the silent room. "I could have welcomed you back. I could have been generous, but I won't. This is your lesson. I hope it hurts, because for years, your absence hurt me." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Mom tried to speak, to beg, but I raised my hand. "No, I'm done listening. I'm done hoping. I'm done forgiving you. You wanted control, and now you've seen what happens when it's gone. I'm finally free from your manipulation, from your expectations, from the family that should have loved me unconditionally, but didn't." And with that, I stood, signaling the end of our little meeting. They left that day humiliated, speechless, broken in a way I had only dreamed of seeing. But I didn't gloat, not outwardly. I let the silence speak for me. Walking back to Daniel's side, I felt lighter than I had in years. The anger that had simmered inside me, the grief, the betrayal, it was gone, replaced by something far stronger: pride. For the first time in my life, I didn't need them. I didn't need their approval, their love, or their attention. I had everything I wanted: my life, my husband, and my dignity intact. And best of all, they knew exactly what they had lost. The days and weeks after the office confrontation were surreal. It wasn't just my immediate family who felt the impact. Word spread fast, and suddenly, even distant relatives, neighbors, and old family friends were calling, texting, or sending awkward messages through social media. Some offered hesitant apologies. Others offered thinly veiled compliments, like they were trying to patch a hole they dug themselves into.
Rebecca's calls were relentless at first. Every day she tried to reach me, alternating between guilt trips and manipulative flattery. "Emily, I just want us to, move past all of this," she said one morning. Her voice was tight, almost desperate. I sat with my coffee, letting her words hang in the air for a beat longer than necessary. "Rebecca," I said slowly, "we don't move past years of betrayal with a phone call." There was silence on the other end. Then she whispered, almost defeated, "I didn't realize. I never meant—" "Exactly," I cut her off gently. "You never meant it. That's the point." Even my mother called, leaving a voice message full of trembling apologies. "Emily, I know I hurt you.
I can never take back the past, but I want you to know I'm sorry. I replayed it twice, then deleted it without a word. And Michael? He tried to show up at the house one evening, smiling nervously like nothing had happened. I let him sit for an hour, making small talk, nodding at all the right moments, before finally saying, "You'll have to excuse me, I'm busy tonight." He left, slamming the door softly, and I smiled. The most satisfying part was watching their desperation grow. Suddenly, family gatherings weren't the same. Holidays felt awkward, tense, and hollow. My parents couldn't look at me without guilt flashing across their faces. Rebecca tried to assert control, but I met every move with calm authority, leaving her frustrated and powerless. Michael kept asking for advice, subtly trying to manipulate me, but I gave only vague guidance. Enough to tease, but never enough to actually help. Even my grandmother noticed the change. She called one afternoon, her voice warm as ever. "Emily, you've grown into a woman they should have respected all along. I've never been prouder of you." Her words felt like sunlight after years of storm. And then, slowly, a quiet began to settle. But it wasn't the hollow quiets of absence or avoidance. It was the quiet of victory. I didn't feel the need to lash out further. I didn't need to send money they didn't deserve or lectures they wouldn't hear. I had already shown them the consequences of their actions. I had already reclaimed my power. Daniel noticed it too. One evening, we sat in our garden, the roses I had planted years ago glowing softly under the lights. "You look free," he said, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "I am," I whispered, leaning into him. "I finally don't care what they think anymore. I don't need them to validate my life. I built it. I love it. And they know it." He smiled, pulling me close. "You've come so far. You've won, Emily. And this time, you didn't lose yourself to them." That was the truth. Even the extended family slowly adjusted. At gatherings, my parents avoided confrontations, Rebecca's tone grew cautious, and Michael seemed perpetually uncomfortable around me. It was subtle, but every glance, every pause, every careful word was a reminder of the reversal that had taken place. I watched it quietly, feeling satisfaction ripple through me. This wasn't just revenge. It wasn't just punishment. It was a reclamation of my life, my dignity, my identity. And the best part? I didn't have to stoop to cruelty. I didn't have to yell, humiliate publicly, or make a spectacle. I let them underestimate me, let them believe they had a chance, and then I quietly ensured that they felt the weight of their own choices. Every time I walked past them at a family function, I saw it. The flicker of regret, the pang of guilt, the knowledge that I was untouchable. It was the sweetest victory imaginable, because at the end of the day, I had what truly mattered. A husband who never left my side, a life I built from the ground up, and the knowledge that I would never again let anyone decide my worth. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. It's been years since that fateful phone call, that first hesitant step back into the lives of the people who abandoned me. And now when I look back, I don't feel bitterness, not the raw, aching bitterness of the past. I feel clarity. I feel strength. I often sit in our garden, the roses blooming bright around me, and think about how far I've come. There were times I doubted myself, moments when I questioned whether choosing Daniel, choosing a life without my family, had been worth it. And every time I see the life we've built, the laughter, the love, the late-night talks over coffee and bills, the victories big and small, and I know it was worth it. I think about my parents sometimes. I see glimpses of their regret, subtle and fleeting. I hear the whispered apologies they still try to send my way, carefully measured. But I've learned that closure doesn't come from their words. It comes from me. I've forgiven them, not for their sake, but for mine. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It doesn't mean giving them another chance to hurt me. It means letting go of the anger, the disappointment, and the weight I carried for too long. Rebecca still calls occasionally, testing boundaries, trying to weave herself back into my life. I answer just enough to keep my peace, but never enough to lose my power. Michael learned quickly that I'm no longer the little sister he can manipulate. And Mom and Dad, they've learned, painfully, that their choices have consequences, and that those consequences were mine to control. Daniel sits with me through it all. His quiet presence, his unwavering support, taught me what love really looks like, the kind that doesn't judge, doesn't abandon, and never wavers no matter the circumstances. Without him, I might have crumbled under the weight of my family's betrayal. Now when I think about that wedding day, the one they boycotted, the one they pretended didn't matter, I don't feel hurt anymore. I feel power. I feel triumph. Because I chose myself. I chose the people who truly mattered. I chose a life built on love, respect, and honesty. And when my family comes to me now, tentatively, seeking crumbs of connection, I see them clearly. I see their desperation, their regret, and their longing. And I smile, because for the first time in my life, I hold the cards. I don't hate them. I just don't need them. And in that freedom, I found everything I ever wanted. The roses bloom outside our window, a reminder that growth takes time, patience, and care. And sometimes the strongest beauty comes after the hardest seasons. I'm Emily. I survived the betrayal, the abandonment, and the silence. And now I thrive. And if they ever try to step into my life again, they'll find that I am unshakable, untouchable, and unbroken. Because some wounds teach you to fly. And mine gave me wings.